So, as she said, I'm Trisha Nichols. So I am at Gap with a very long title, and I sort of made it up myself, which means that it could change tomorrow or the next day, and that no one inside Gap is necessarily married to it yet. But it's really to embody the fact that we want to be about consumers and put consumers first. And someone like a mom is really the best audience to do that with because it's very authentic. So my title is, it's Global Lead of Consumer Engagement. So from a global perspective, any time that we have an interface with our consumer outside of the store, within marketing, this is something that my team and my group manages. And so it's anything that's media, it's all things brand partnerships, but essentially it's any time that we can actually just sit down and say, what does the consumer want? How do they want us to talk to them? Why do they want us to talk to them? And so it's a great, fun thing. And why Gap? Gap is something that, coming even out of college, I wanted to work at Gap, and so I'm thrilled to do it. I'm very passionate about the brand. And when I got there, we talk a lot about the brand itself, and we talk a lot about, who we're trying to reach. And within, a little bit of being there, I realized I hadn't heard a lot about kids and baby, and, Gap Kids and Baby Gap. So I asked a few questions about, why is this not a part of our, brainstorming that we're doing every day? And what I realized is that it's because moms are actually granting us permission to innovate with them through technology and content. So a lot of times our relationship with mom is something that she's really carrying forward for us. So she's become our ultimate storyteller. So I was thrilled with that. That makes this very fun to talk about today. I'm so glad to be here. So I want to focus on her. So we'll talk about mom. Okay, so mom. One of the things I like to think about with her is thinking of her as the original storyteller. She may not be the first, but I think she's probably the most credible. And these narratives that she's told her children have actually shaped their beliefs, their values, and really, the individuals that they are. And so she's a very powerful person. And the way that she's told these narratives have become very interesting to us. So we know that she likes to share. So moms love to share their stories with other moms. It's a really inclusive community. So you think about the fact that this is very tight-knit. She's looking for people who are like-minded like her. She's even looking for like-minded brands, which is where we begin, to really think about our role with her. One of the things I did when I was researching this project is I talked to some moms about these stories that they're telling. And like I said, they're for the most part credible. Not all of them are. I think when you get older, your mom starts telling you stuff, you're like, there's no way. So there's some of that I encountered. But the funniest thing I encountered is, if you see in the beginning this mom, this picture, she's talking on the phone. So she's calling a friend, maybe taking time away from dinner or something, but she's chatting on the phone. We knew this went on a lot. Then you move into technology. And with technology, you think about things like maybe a Facebook experience. And some of the moms I talked to actually said to me, yeah, sometimes I'm trying to talk about my kids on Facebook. I'm sharing stories, and my kid is like nagging at me. So I'm like, honey, I'm trying to talk about you on Facebook. So we don't necessarily want that to happen, but we know that this is an extremely inclusive community. It's been fun to research. So with that, like I said, technology has become a major catalyst. Technology has helped us amplify, or helped her amplify her narratives. It's really opened the door so that she can strengthen the bonds with other moms. So this community is so fast-paced, and a lot of different blogs you find. You, of course, see things in social feeds. Pinterest has become something that, of all the technology out there that I learned along the way through some of the work I did either at Pepsi and other places, Pinterest is the one that I found out from another mom, or from a mom. So that's the first time I encountered technology that a mom was telling me about because she was using it as an early adopter. This fun one, this whiskey in my sippy cup, you can't imagine how many blogs I found like this. This is funny stuff. So these moms are sharing not what it's like to be the glamorous mom, but they're sharing the unglamorous stories as well, as you saw in Samantha's video. So we think that technology has done a lot along the way. So then Gap, why are we here to talk about Gap? I thought it might be fun to discuss Gap's reason for being. And the reason I say that is actually the document that was created by Don and Doris Fisher. They created Gap in 1969, and they wrote a business plan. It's about 5 pages long, and at the top it says reason for being. And it goes through the fact that they founded Gap because there was essentially a need in finding pants and jeans that fit. So they thought, okay, well, we're going to find, pants and jeans that fit. We're going to create this store. It's going to embody these values. It's 1969. The world is feeling groovy. People are very individualistic, they're optimistic, we want to capture that. So the funny thing is they had the vision for the store, but it wasn't until Doris, the mom herself, actually helped name it. So you think about moms and they want to give something a name that nurtures its true vision. In the beginning, Don thought to name it Pants and Discs because he said, we're selling pants that fit, jeans that fit, and let's sell records and tapes because that's what the youth is really about. This is really embodying the culture. So thank goodness Doris came around and figured out to actually name it Gap after the fact that there was not only a generational gap in the world, but also that there was a gap in the marketplace. So she nurtured that name along like any good mom. So then what do Gap and moms have in common? They have shared values. So Gap was founded, like I said, in 1969. So they were looking to have things that embodied optimism, individualism, and democracy. And if you really look at what Gap has done, especially in the mom community, there's a lot of this being amplified. So especially democratizing, some of the stories and narratives or even some of the technologies used, being very optimistic, and really celebrating your child's individualism. After Gap was opened in 1969, those original youth that they were reaching, it was actually getting older. They were becoming parents, having kids. So again, Don and Doris came to the table and said, why don't we create a place where this audience or this group of ours can come in and actually bring these values to their children. So Gap Kids, that was created in 1986, and then Baby Gap was born in 1990. And this is our mommy community, and it is really strong. We have a way to actually interact with moms in a store, online, in digital, offline. So it's been a big community for us, and what we found is that this mom is actually our best storyteller. She's what we like to call a bonded mom. And bonding is a really interesting thing, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But this picture, actually, I'm sharing, I have to give credit to it. It's on our Instagram page, so the user credit is up here. But this is really interesting. This is someone capturing a picture of their child, and they wanted to communicate that with us, that their child embodied this be bright, this feeling of being bright in the world, which is really at the essence of Gap. So this bonded mom is our storyteller, and we're so thankful. So how did we get here? So I want to talk about bonding a little bit more. The word bonding, I of course looked it up. It can mean really just the process of binding things together. It also means that emotional bond that's formated. It also has something to do with teeth, which has nothing to do with this presentation, so I deleted it. So if you're looking that up later, I do realize that teeth was mentioned. But from a marketing standpoint, what can that mean for us? So it's also a series of positive interactions and activities with your brand that are measurable, beyond being simply present in their life. So you can measure bonding. You can actually think about all the interactions you're getting, the narratives, the sentiment. You can actually measure bonding in ways that evaluates people from just simply being aware of your brand, all the way to the fact that they're now cascading messages for your brand. So bonding is something that we think also just embodies what mom has with her kids. There is no tighter bond than the relationship between a mother and her child. So this is a great way to capture what we feel about Gap and the relationship we have with moms. So where does that really occur? Remember our shared values before. We talked about optimism, democracy, individualism. So those shared values, along, of course, with product, and product has been very consistent with Gap Kids and Baby Gap, and something that moms could always count on. So those shared values and product, you marry that with technology and content, move that into giving her a way to express that, what we like to call expressive experiences, and then, you found mom. Hi, mom. So this has been a great way for us to not only see that this bonding can occur, but it's very authentic. The fact that the values are being expressed through technology and content, we're giving her content, she's giving us content, and then giving her experiences or platforms to share those experiences. This is what I had to sit down and think about. What's the most compelling thing I could tell you today about Gap and mom? And it's really this model. So we know that also this model is accelerated within a trusted community. So remember, mom, again, on the phone, on Facebook. We looked at some of the ways that she's actually truly embodying trust, and the question was asked, do you trust the information and advice that you get from the following sources? So just the normal population is there in the lighter blue, but mom is in the dark blue. She highly, highly trusts the information she gets here. So we are there in every place. We have a very deep community relationship with bloggers, mommy bloggers. Part of it is just because the insights they give us. They actually share a lot of information about us, so we have to stay in touch with them. We also, through Facebook, through things like Twitter, highly involved with her. But then Pinterest. Pinterest is an area, like I said, that came about, really that was the mom adopting that community first, so we were there with her on Pinterest as well. So trust is another big factor. So we had this invitation from her, and then what do we do with it? So a couple fun things I just want to share is some of the work we did. One is casting call. Casting call is what it sounds like. It is a way for GAP to ask mom to submit children that she wants to submit into a contest where we could maybe put her in a GAP ad or do other things, give grants to charities. Some of them are relating to education. The casting call is really interesting because it's not just simply come bring your cute kid and put it in a GAP ad. We've really tried hard to make it about what is unique about your child, what makes them a star that brightens the world, and get her to really communicate those things with us. And that tells us a lot about whether or not we have, a really authentic platform. So casting call, millions of people interact. It's a voting community as well as it is just submissions. And I think right now we have, I think I have on the next page, 22,000 people just entered the last round that we had. So we almost have to turn people away. What I did is I read some of these submissions, and they're just so great. The moms are talking about what makes their child an individual, what makes their child optimistic, and it's embodying everything that GAP wanted to be about in the beginning. So the next is I Want Candy. I Want Candy is just simply this, content that both moms and kids alike could share. So featured in I Want Candy, it was actually about our holiday line last year, which was rock candy. So this girl, her name is Maria Aragon. She is a YouTube sensation. I don't know if anybody in here has heard of her. Has anybody heard of her? Yeah, okay. So I'm not 8 years old, so I hadn't actually encountered her before, but she became a YouTube sensation. She sang a Lady Gaga song. Content, of course, about her being gobbled up at the time. So we created an element of I Want Candy video that we put her in, and we actually cast a child to be in this video with her. So someone from the submissions that we could get. So I'll share with you the video. I'm going to apologize in advance. This song is going to stick with you all day. I really am sorry. Don't hate me. If you're from the 80s, you're really going to hate me. But Rick, if you're back there, please play our video.
I need everybody to clap their hands now. Whoa.
Okay, so I have actually looked at that video 1,000 times, which is why I warned you about the song. The other thing is I looked at all of this information that we had about I Want Candy, because internally the team that managed this is in San Francisco. I'm in New York, so time difference sometimes got away from us, and I was trying to get to the bottom of, beside being really great content that both moms and kids could share alike, why was this so viral like it was? And what I found is the best descriptions of this came from moms on blogs. So every image I looked at, every information I pulled, I was realizing I was getting from all these different blogs, which is exactly the point of today's discussion. That is something that we realized that shares the optimism and values of kids that moms took advantage for us. So that's I Want Candy. That was a huge hit for us. And just one last thing about this. When we were casting, the little girl in the video, I don't remember, I think she's the one with the guitar, not Maria. She's actually the winner. So she was our GAP winner. And the day that we did the casting call for this, the line was just around the corner, and it was the same day that Uniqlo opened, which happened to be our competitor. And then, there was Instagram shares about it. There was a lot of tweeting about it. So the community just took off for us, which is really the powerful thing. So that's I Want Candy. And then this is a recent partnership that we did with Diane von Furstenberg. So Diane von Furstenberg came in and did a line of clothes with Gap for kids and baby. And anybody who knows her clothes or her famous wrap dress, there were people, when they first found out about this, were calling us, those of us in marketing, like, I need you to go to the Gap store and get me that wrap dress. And I was like, I don't actually do that. We don't have them here. But this clothing line was really, really, really high in demand. And one of the reasons that was is a couple weeks before the line came out, we put some information out with our mommy bloggers, but we also tweeted about it. We sent out an email database about it. But it went bananas, and people were almost to the point where I hadn't seen this since I had been at Pepsi when we pulled, I think it was Code Red from the shelves, and consumers were so angry they were calling us. This was a happier place for sure, but the demand was incredible for this. And what we found is it just really came from the fact that we had let our moms talk about it up front. So we created DVF Loves Gap in Twitter. And I wanted to pull some examples of that for you, but I didn't get them. But there was just so much content and so much just buzz about it. So we essentially had people, again, lined out the door trying to get the clothes. And the partnership is still ongoing. And then this is Skillshare. So some of you who were here yesterday at the Shopper Marketing 3.0 had a chance to hear a little bit about Skillshare. And Skillshare is really an interesting thing for us, and it's pretty new. We just did a little test of it really early this year in January. And what it is, I'll tell you a little bit first before I tell you who Skillshare is. But we wanted to think about a way to engage our stores a little bit. And we realized that some of the way to provide value to Gap consumers is not just in product value. You want your product to be strong, but you also want them to find value in other ways. So that we created this idea that we could tell people how to wear our product and how to style our product, whether it's for them or their kids or whatever. So we brought in this blogger. He's from Swagger. He's the founder of Swagger. And he is a stylist. So he came into a Gap store and he helped teach Gap shoppers how to style and wear the product. They took pictures of that. They also loaded that up to their social feeds. But what we found is people were so engaged and enjoyed that so much. And the feedback that we got was that, this gave me a reason to really love Gap more. This gave me a reason to really come here versus shopping online. Moms are so busy that a lot of times they convert from looking at us on Gap.com or Gap Kids or Gap Baby Gap to just shopping right that instantly that way through e-commerce channels. So we wanted to provide a little bit more value to her. So Skillshare, essentially, is a marketplace community of classes that you can take. And if you go onto their site, you'll see that Skillshare is really any piece of real estate can be a classroom, any person can be a teacher. So it's a democratized way to figure out what people want to learn about, who can teach it, and where it should be taught. It's really interesting. So we did a project with them. We brought them into our Soho store. We saw sales boosted that day, traffic boosted that day in the double digits. So it was a really great project for us. The only thing is that something that we could do nationwide. That's a really hard promise, but that's something that we were looking at. And I think somebody like a mom, to relate back to what Gap was founded on and all the values, Dawn and Doris really believed in education. This is a perfect fit. And if you can give kids something to do in the store while she's shopping, again, adding that value, we think this could be really strong. So that's why I brought it here today. So just in closing, what advice would I give you? Talked a lot about a lot of different things, how to bond with mom. But here's the advice. So bonding with the world's original storyteller. You want to amplify your shared values through experiences and content, if it's true. So if it's authentic for you, you have truly authentic values that you share with mom, this is what you should amplify. If you're not in the game of awareness, which Gap is not, we really wanted to come back to something that's like, why are we here with her? The other is provide a platform for her expression. Create a dialogue, not a monologue. You don't want to just talk at her. You want her talking with you, and in fact, some ways talking about you. And that's really, really powerful. And the last is use technology in a really relevant way. So go back to step one. If you can use technology to amplify those shared values, you've actually found your perfect match. So with that, just want to say thanks. Can I get a mic?
Thank you, Tricia. You guys, we would have a couple minutes, and we'd love to have some Q&A if you are game. There's Nancy has a mic there. Samantha has a mic here, and I will cover this area. If you could please state your name and company for the benefit of Tricia so that she knows who she's talking to. Does anybody have any questions for her?
And if you don't, I can talk after, too. I know it's in the morning. Everybody's shy. I'm shy.
We have one in the back.
Okay.
I'm going to beat you. I'm beating.
Hi, I'm Jessica Bender. I work at PhD in LA. Just wondering, you talk about doing the blogging programs, and, I think that makes a lot of sense when talking to moms, but how do you measure it, Is it, and like social pass-ons and that type of thing, but in terms of sales uplift, is there anything you can do with that, or?
So that's a good question. With blogging, sometimes we're using that for insights. So for us, the KPI, as you would say, maybe more in the dialogue we get back from her, or the information we get from her, or how much she's sharing with others, and of course we can track and measure that. We don't always correlate it directly to sales because, in some ways you want to build the relevance first, you want to build the bonding, as I talked about, that eventually we know bonding actually represents a higher share of wallet anyway. So if you actually are measuring it in some ways that you can do that, we found that it's really a higher share of wallet than when they're just simply aware of your brand or your brand is present to them. So we know that there's a linkage between being bonded and actually using that for occasions and purchase. We don't necessarily use the blogging communities as a direct correlation to sales. So I think it's more about insights, it's more about dialogue and the rate of sharing. Oops, there's a question over there. Right there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lauren Crawford. I'm coming from AOL in New York City. And my question is, what are some best practices as far as when brands are working with publishers, whether it be like a network or, a premium publisher, for sponsorships and things like that? Like, how do you guys create original content with publishers that doesn't feel too curated?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I'll answer it. It's not necessarily specific to mom, but we found something that we're doing right now, and I think it's worked really well. So we've worked with some publishers, actually some bloggers, people that come from places like Glam, who are helping us style our products. So we have given them product, but we realize that you're not necessarily going to, especially in a stylist way, they're not going to dress someone head to toe in Gap all the time unless it's a Gap ad. So we gave them the authority to really create stylings with other product within their influencer community. So it's highly, it's about the fact that, again, putting the consumer first. They are influenced by certain people. We turn to those people to help us understand how is our product best integrated into that world? Does it make sense? And if it's relevant for them as a community or a publisher group that we work with, then we want them to use it. So try to keep it really authentic, but when you do something like that, you don't always know what's going to come of it. So we've talked a lot about how do we build the right objective going in so we're not wondering why it didn't do something on the end. So you have to be very consistent with what you think something like that's going to do for you. And if it's about influencing people, then you really rest on that. So that's one way we've thought about using those communities.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Assor. I'm from Universal McCann in New York, a media agency. So you mentioned obviously Gap isn't in the business of, right, they're not trying to create awareness lists. It's probably almost 100% or as close as you can get. And you're not tying some of these programs to sales directly. So if you're establishing what those KPIs are and determining if a program is successful or not, but how are you ultimately selling it into your management or to your finance teams where if we're not going to tie these programs back to sales, how can we justify that this investment is better off being used here for something that's softer versus putting it into a more tangible, direct link?
So a lot of the things we did, like I Want Candy, probably I Want Candy is one of the best examples. Skillshare is a really great example. A lot of times, product is actually still at the heart of it. So we're still communicating the product essence, or we're letting our mommy communities communicate what Gap products are out. Diane von Furstenberg was a really great example. So not even expecting the that's what would come from it, but the fact that they created such demand for us that there was sellouts everywhere, it was almost sort of creating a Snackwell type demand before we even had the product available. So there are those that still have product at the heart of it, and when it makes sense to have it that way, like a styled buy, then we can expect to study what it's doing to sales. Skillshare was actually a great one. It's just hard to replicate that nationwide, but we saw, as part of the class, we let people, for a very small amount of money, they join the class. That's how Skillshare works. It's like $10. But while they were in the store, they got lessons on how to style the product, but they were also given gift cards, and then they turned around and used them right there in the store, and they also lingered in the store a lot longer than what we typically see people do. So those are the two things we learned. Loyalty, pays, especially when it can be used in an urgent way, if you can deliver it immediately, and that people ultimately will stay a little bit longer with you because you've given them something of value beyond just simply a price point.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
We're gonna